Say hello. Welcome back, everyone. Last time we spent an absolute age copying this vintage sweater. However, you might remember that there were a few details about this version that needed to be tweaked a little bit because I wanted to write up a pattern for it, but this didn't fit me exactly like I wanted. I thought it'd be a good idea to knit up another sample to test out those modifications. I had the inspiration to use the autumn colors as the basis for that cardigan design. Another little twist that I wanted to do was see if I could knit this on my knitting machine. It took me a while to knit up this first sample, and I was trying not to take an absolute age knitting another sample and writing out the pattern together. So I wanted to see if I could use my knitting machine to make this sweater. Having set up my knitting machine ready for a sample and gauge swatching, I wanted to see if I could get the transfer carriage to work because it would speed up the process a little bit of automatically moving the needles that were working for the ribbing into the straight knitting work. I had gone through some YouTube video recommendations and I found a wonderful detailed close-up view of how this transfer carriage is supposed to work. If you go back and watch some of my other knitting machine videos from my 40s capsule wardrobe, then you'll know that I had tried to make this work before and it didn't. And I realized that the thing that was wrong was my spring was bent out of shape. So it wasn't usable anymore in its current condition because it wasn't appropriately springing back into place and picking up the stitches. So, you know, I tried a few different ways to fix it, bend it back into shape, glue it back into shape. I really tried. I tried finding a replacement spring piece. They even shipped me one, like a replacement one, but even the replacement one must have been from an old transfer carriage because that one was also bent out of place. So unfortunately, I couldn't make the transfer carriage work. So I was like, okay, let's just do the gauge swatch and see what tension I need on my knitting machine in order to work at the right gauge for making another sample. As you can see though, this was a little bit of a problem. Maybe you can see it from the fabric that I made. It is too tight. So this is the loosest tension that I can get on my machine, and it is too small for this particular cardigan. I have what's called a standard gauge knitting machine, and I think I would need what's called a mid-gauge knitting machine. I am already up to the gills in machinery, so while I would love a mid-gauge knitting machine, I don't know that I have the room to get one. So I think we're gonna go back to hand knitting for the rest of this Autumn Dots cardigan. So I am working on the first repeat of the drop stitch pattern. Here are the colors I've chosen, by the way. I'm very excited. And originally my thought process was that each row of like the dots was going to be a different color. So it'd be like row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, and then starting over again. As I'm knitting this though, I'm realizing depending on how I carry up the floats, I would have such a mess of yarn balls as I'm knitting. So my other thought process is that I would do an entire gradient across all of the dots. So knit, I don't know, 4 repeats with this, 4 with this, 4 with that, 4 with that, so that the entire sweater from the bottom up, the contrast color is a gradient. The more I've been knitting on this, the more I really like that idea. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna count how many contrast color rows there are on my cardigan so that I can use this as a gradient overall. I like that idea. So after a lot of back and forth about whether or not I could even use a knitting machine or I could get some more of the machine accessories working, I ended up hand knitting this, and I did have a good pattern established. Unfortunately, at this point, I also got quite sick. So while I wasn't feeling the best, it did mean that I had a lot of time in bed to really knit away at this cardigan.
Knitting when I'm not feeling so well, but it always happens that I'm a little brain fogged, and I just noticed that I forgot to do the tuck stitch on this particular row of the cream color. So it's time to take this off the needles and rip it back. It's a bit painful when I do that, and I don't usually just fully take it off the needles. It's just that this yarn is so sticky, I'm pretty certain it's not going to unravel all the way. But yeah, it's time to rip it all back. Not all of it, just back to the previous cream round. It's okay. All right.
The way this cardigan is constructed is it's knit up from the bottom up flat, and the back and fronts are knit all in one piece and the arms separate. So the best way I can explain this is by holding up the original cardigan. So this is the cardigan I copied for the one that I'm wearing, and you cast on all of the stitches to knit all the way from the left front here around the back and then the right front there. So when you start knitting, you are knitting flat from the bottom all the way to the underarms. So it's a whole bunch of flat knitting until you get to the underarms. But then at the underarms, you have to split apart and knit in 3 separate sections. So you're knitting the fronts first, and you're doing an underarm shaping, like a lovely curve to it, as well as the back shaping. And then as you can see, potentially here, you also have to do a little bit of neck shaping in order to cut that out for your neck to fit comfortably and not feel like you're being choked too much. So that's all the shaping discussion. One issue that I had with the color choices was I had 13 dots row repeats. So I was kind of one row odd out. So one row would either have to be an extra color, or I was thinking, my first inclination was that I would take the golden yellow and the lovely kind of pumpkin orange and knit them together. Like I would hold them together and kind of knit them interchangeably to make more of a gradient. But when I tried that out and I looked at it, it just really stuck out. So I decided against that in the end. And I did one extra row of that golden color because that was kind of at the top and the lightest. So I thought it would visually have the least weight in terms of color. So having more of it would balance out to the deeper, darker colors a little bit better. Another reason I wanted to go with this autumn gradient is I was planning on attending Rhinebeck, and I was attending it for 2 days. The first day I wanted to wear one of the sweaters that I made from my 40s capsule wardrobe, which was so comfortable, so wonderful. And the second day I really wanted to wear this Autumn Dots cardigan, but Well, you'll see. The sweater wasn't quite in the wearable state even the night before I was planning on wearing it.
Okay, so we are in the Airbnb. Tomorrow's day 2 of Rhinebeck, and I want to wear the autumn version of the Dots sweater. I have one sleeve out of 2 attached. I do have the collar knit, but I still don't have the button bands knit. But I did buy the buttons for the cardigan today on day 1 of Rhinebeck. So the rest of the evening, the goal is to sew in the second sleeve, knit the button bands, add the buttons, and weave in the ends to the point where at least I can wear it tomorrow. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least I can wear it.
By the end of that night, I had the button bands attached, the buttons attached, a collar knit in place. The only thing is I didn't really weave in all the ends. I just kind of cut them short enough and stuffed them into my sleeves when I was wearing the cardigan when I went to Rhinebeck, and I loved wearing this cardigan when I was at the New York State Sheep and Wool Festival, which is also called Rhinebeck. So it was wonderful. There are definitely a few things that I want to change between this sample that I knit up and the pattern that I'm writing, which you'll hear a little bit about next time. But first, let's just give this beautiful cardigan the space I think it deserves in a final reveal of its own.
As you can probably tell, I am incredibly pleased with the general effect of this sweater and how it turned out. The autumn colors are absolutely perfect and exactly what I had envisioned. I loved wearing this to Rhinebeck, and it was so fun to meet so many of you. That was such a great time. Thank you if you were there for coming out to me and saying hello. That was such a cool experience. Okay, but back to the sweater. I don't think, however, that I will recommend knitting this pattern in just a fingering weight yarn. It is not structured enough. It's a little bit too see-through, and there's a bit of issues where the button band meets the main jacket body that I think would be fixed if the yarn had a little bit more structure. The other thing that I don't think that I will recommend is doing this fold over collar. The neckline of this cardigan is just very, very high, ends up being kind of a stand-up collar and creates a lot of tension around the neck area. So I think I'm going to remove that from my pattern recommendation. I learned a lot. I will wear this a ton, but there are some tweaks that I want to do to make it just that touch of a bit better, you know what I mean? Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed kind of these cozy autumn vibes, even if we're a little bit late into the season. I know that where I am, we had these beautiful fall, like red leaves on all the trees until we had a cold snap. It's currently like 21 degrees Fahrenheit. I guess it's a few degrees below 0 Celsius. So we had a cold snap come through and all the trees were like, ah, and dropped most of their leaves. So we went suddenly into winter, but I'm still trying to hold on to autumn as long as I can by wearing this cardigan as much as I can. So thank you so much. And if you like videos like this, if you want to see more historical vintage knitting and other fiber crafts, feel free to subscribe. We are doing Craftmas this year, so there'll be a bigger announcement about that, I think, coming up soon. Yeah, stay cozy, stay crafty, and I'll see you next time. Bye!